Good afternoon, personality folk, personality enthusiasts, or fools that seem to associate themselves with a bunch of letters. Welcome to a video on the 5 characteristics of what make an ENTP an ENTP. Now, if you don't know what an ENTP stands for, it stands for an extroverted, intuitive, thinking perceiver. Okay. Now, if we break that down a little bit, you've got extroverted intuition as the hero function. You've got TI, which is the introverted thinking. You've got FE, which is extroverted feeling, and then SI, which is introverted sensing. Now, if you're unacquainted with those terms, I suggest you look them up because that's a completely another video. But what I want to go over are 5 characteristics that you can be pretty sure to associate with an ENTP. Now, number 1 is novelty. Okay, novelty, new ideas, new experiences, new possibilities, new jobs, new everything. Okay, shiny objects that over time get dull, become dull, depending on how interested and how captivated the ENTP is. That's not to say that they just, pick up one thing and then drop it the next week. These things are always subject to context. An ENTP, like myself, I've loved things like martial arts my whole life, reading, writing, all these different things, but I'm always open to new opportunities. I'm always open to experiencing life in an unconventional manner. Just like this YouTube channel is called The Unconventional Journey, because ENTPs are not traditional in terms of how they go about life. They're always seeking new novel ways of doing things, and they may just go against the traditional route of just finding a job if it doesn't attach some sort of purpose or meaning to their life, which you could say is associated with extroverted intuition. But novelty is certainly a big factor when we're thinking about ENTPs here. Now, number 2 is an interesting one, and I've got it down here as unattached, or a lack of attachment to ideas. And this is also kind of known as devil's advocate. When you are arguing with an ENTP, in conversation with an extroverted, intuitive, thinking perceiver, things may go a little bit strange. Okay, you may see a lot of jumping around, a lot of jouncing ideas off one another, and it may seem to you quite clear that you don't know what the ENTP's argument is, because they may have just put forward a perspective and then challenged it about 5 seconds later with something new that juxtaposes what was said. The reason for this is the combination of NETI. Okay, you've got all these ideas that are flinging in, and you've got TI, which is applying a kind of logical framework to make sense of what the idea is. And the reason why they are constantly disagreeing with you is not because they don't like you. They might fancy you for all you know. Who knows? But it's because they're searching for truth. They're searching for a sense of objectivity. And hell, who knows? They may be going in the right direction, or wrong direction rather. But more often than not, they're not far from the truth, because NETI is kind of has a propensity to analyze everything from multiple angles, and I think this translates to a lot of ENTPs being centrist in their political outlook, simply because they see multiple perspectives. and they don't ever attach one belief to them. They can't. You could say they're cherry picking certain ideas that correspond to this umbrella of truth that they're trying to unravel. So I would say, unlike an ENFP, which is, dominated by FI, FI seems to be very value based, okay? And the reason why it's so different to TI is because it seems that TI is ever changing, while FI could be more contained, more permanent in their value systems. It's FI is harder to change than TI because TI seems to always be logically thinking something out, while FI will be this conglomerate of values and belief systems and morals that change less than TI, because you don't want to be changing your values every 5 seconds, do you? But that's funny because an ENTP does, but he never or she never actually has one, to some extent. I mean, there are certain things that we all believe in, in terms of what is, you could say, objectively good or objectively bad, but they're always willing to explore the possibility that they're wrong, because we prove ourselves wrong all the time. And that's because NE can flush out the most stupid idea, and if they don't have TI to kind of the parent function, to slap it on its wrist, and say, hang on a minute, that's a bit stupid. Let's make sense of this. So that's TI, and that's what I mean about the lack of attachment to ideas. Now, number 3 is adaptability. Okay, in my opinion, ENFPs, ESTPs, and ENTPs, bunch of plonkers, a bunch of Ps, very adaptable, susceptible to change, come alive in the chaos, ENTPs don't necessarily do well in a structured environment, and that's because of their nature. The way I like to think about it is, you've got, if you look back into how we evolved, you had sort of the hunter-gatherers that would go out and explore and chop things and kill and whatever and bring back the goods and constantly on the move. And then you have the settlers that would remain in one place and focus on things like stability and whatnot. Well, an ENTP seems to be more the hunter-gatherer mindset, the more sort of ADD, light, on his feet, very kind of go with the flow like state. You put an ENTP in the deep end, and I think that they have a better chance in adapting, or a much better chance at adapting than you could say, an INFJ perhaps, or any sort of J heavy personality type, simply because like an ISFJ doesn't know necessarily how to improvise in a situation of uncertainty, while for ENTPs and ESTPs, the unknown is less met with fear than it is excitement. And if plans change, an ENTP does not really care, because they will just see it as something new. This is the whole thing. It's like adapting to something new. So circumstances that could potentially be problematic for another type could well actually bring alive an ENTP. And they don't have a problem in living in a condition that may be less convenient. I think ENTPs value inconvenience for the beauty of being able to overcome a challenge, you know, and putting themselves in a state that has to overcome something. So I think that adaptability is a component of the ENTP personality. Now, number 4, which seems to be a byproduct effect of that, is disorganization. I mean, if I just show you my table now, I don't really want to, but it's a state. And that's because an ENTP is always kind of in their heads. The lack of awareness of their environment, and the lack of interest in changing it if it doesn't cause a nuisance or a problem for the ENTP. The likelihood of them bringing about change to their immediate environment is very little, and it's kind of done on a maintenance level rather than a consistent level. So ENTPs are disorganized in the sense that they don't need to plan things in terms of writing it down, because a lot of the planning goes up in the head, and a lot of the planning is revolved around improvisation, because they've maybe thought out all the different possible futures, and then whichever one arrives, they already know how to adapt to that thing. So they're organized in the sense that they can improvise, but they're disorganized in the sense that it just looks like chaos from the outside perspective. So it can be annoying, especially for the household. Could be left in a state, but being disorganized allows them to basically be adaptable and be improvisational and overcome things, but in a chaotic like fashion. Unlike an ENTJ, which has TE and is able to sort of organize things to essentially allow for results. An ENTP opposes that in the sense that they'll just sort it out in the process, in the journey of doing it. They'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, if you see what I mean. And it can be good and it can be bad. It has its benefits in adaptability, but in terms of stability and not letting the place look like a tip, they lose a point in that regard. Now, number 5, the final characteristic, or not the final characteristic, but just out of these 5 that I thought about, and this is optimism. In my opinion, I think ENTPs are eternal optimists. I think they're always looking for that opportunity, and I think ENTPs are not at a loss when it comes to self-belief, and kind of psyching themselves up in terms of trying to overcome a challenge. Now, from the outside perspective, this could be seen as cocky or overzealous or whatever someone comes across, if they're a little bit egotistical. But it's not really that can be further from the truth. What it is that is the main thing, and this is again indicative of ENFPs as well. And what it is it's a passion. It's a passion for ideas. Okay, it's a passion for something that captivates them, and it's used as a fuel to drive them forward. And any sort of problem for an ENTP along the way, there is a solution. There is always a solution. There is never an obstacle that cannot be overcome. Nothing is impossible. It's just, you could say, in progress. Okay, so I think that unless an ENTP comes down with a terminal illness or something that really fucks them up, they're gonna be optimistic about life. They're going to. I think this is the trick for an ENTP, and it's once they've conquered the fear of the unknown, or rather, the fear of failure. The yeah, sorry, yeah, I'll be down in a second. Sorry about that, guys. We'll be wrapping up now anyway. But yeah, regarding optimism, unless an ENTP has not overcome their fear of failure and they've developed their SI by engaging in new experiences, that they have got a repository of failure that they can learn from. They've got a repository of mistakes that they've learned from, hopefully, and this translates to a new sort of energy and a new optimism for the future. So that's that. That's those 5 characteristics of an ENTP. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry if it went on a bit too long, but if you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for future videos. Thank you.